I've got another helping of indie films for this week's low budget binge, so let's start binging. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Bad Ben 8, Pandemic, is available streaming on Tubi and the Bad Ben website. It's directed and written by Nigel Bach. While in quarantine due to a highly contagious virus that some of us might know about, Tom Riley, aka Nigel Bach, attempts to keep his paranormal investigation gig afloat by doing online consultations. Riley is inundated with videos from people all over the world, some claiming their loved ones have succumbed to the virus, turning them into mindless zombies, while some claiming more demonic possessions are going on. Riley does his best to consult these desperate souls, but finds online consultation to be less successful in saving anyone's lives. Unlike any of the other Bad Ben films, Pandemic is the most self-referential and self-conscious. It's also my least favorite by far. I understand that at this point, Bach is in search of something new to do with his Bad Ben series, so I can appreciate him trying new things. But this experiment proved to be pretty unsatisfying. Basically, the film consists of Tom Riley sitting at his computer and opening video attachments and answering Zoom calls. These shorts were not made by Riley, which is why most of them lack that Bad Ben charm that permeates all of the other installments. These shorts are made by fans and tied loosely together with some commentary from Tom. Being made by fans, Bach seems pretty forgiving for the shoddy filmmaking going on. This proves he's a nice guy, but it doesn't prove to make for an enjoyable movie. These short films, each lasting about 2 to 3 minutes, are excruciatingly repetitive. It's as if Bach may have sent out an idea to his fans, and they all tried to make the exact same short inside and around their homes. Every one of these films, and there are about 20 of them, if not more, consist of the same jump scares, the same plot points, even the same beginnings and ends. They all seem to describe the same situation, with slight variation, resulting in someone popping up out of the darkness or charging towards the camera, and then the camera goes black. Sure, this might cause a jolt or two, but when seen over and over, it proves the law of diminishing returns perfectly. By the end, it seems even Riley has run out of comments reacting to these videos. If Pandemic proves anything, it's that not everyone can make a Bad Ben-style movie. It proves that despite his rudimentary setups and deliveries, Bach's special recipe for low-budget horror can't be easily repeated. It makes me respect Bach more for his conviction to his filmmaking and the continuation of this series. I get that the pandemic was a time of great turmoil for everyone, and Bach most likely did his best to make something out of all of these repetitive shorts, but he can only do so much. Pandemic is way over long, clocking in at almost 2 hours. That's 2 hours of different people playing out the same scenario over and over again. If I didn't have to review it, I wouldn't have endured it, and I wouldn't recommend you do it either. Next week is the latest and last Bad Ben movie, Part 9, called Benign. I see what you did there, Nigel. And I'll see you all then. On the Trail of UFOs, Night Visitors. It's new on demand and digital download from Small Town Monsters and 1091 Pictures. The director is Seth Breedlove. Seth Breedlove takes some time off hunting for Bigfoot in his On the Trail of Bigfoot series to make a follow-up to 2020's On the Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky, with Night Visitor, which focuses on cattle mutilations, alien abductions, and strange happenings in the skies of Colorado. Investigative reporter Shannon LeGros heads to Colorado to check out things that go bump in the night sky in this spooky documentary. I can imagine if you don't spend a lot of time on YouTube watching paranormal videos of UFOs, ghosts, and Bigfoot, you might find out something new about unexplained phenomenon in this documentary. It focuses mainly on unusual sightings and cattle mutilations that accompany them in and around the Colorado area. I guess if you're looking for a nice compilation of occurrences involving cattle mutilations and UFO sightings all put together in one package, it might strike some interest. It's not a bad documentary, just not one that I learned a lot of new information from. One of the things that kind of annoyed me about this one was that it used rudimentary animation for the spaceships. While these recreations are not labeled as such, I don't think people are going to be fooled that the cartoon spaceships are actual footage, but I do feel that using these little animations made things feel cheap. I get it. They don't have footage of actual sightings, but to animate them takes away the little validity these stories might have and will only empower the scoffers in the audience. I've really enjoyed the Small Town Monsters docuseries, especially Breedlove's On the Trail of Bigfoot series. That seems to be where Breedlove's passion lies. This documentary was not bad at all. It just feels as if it isn't really bringing anything new to the table. I recommend the Small Town Monsters documentary series wholeheartedly, but this, unfortunately, is one of the weaker ones. This one felt too impersonal, and I almost wish they would have just focused on one cattle mutilation rather than try to cast such a wide net over the whole subject matter. Reed's Point is new on demand and digital download from Uncork'd Entertainment. The director is Dale Fabrigar, and it's written by Tricia, Aurand, Suzanne, DeLaurentiis, and Sandy Lowe. After a mysterious mobile home wreck occurred on a camping trip in the area known as Reed's Point in New Jersey, Sarah, played by Sasha Ann, and her friend Alex, played by Evan Adams, were the only survivors. Sarah's cousin and Alex's girlfriend, Kelsey, played by Madison Ekstrand, went missing after the crash, and both are haunted by her disappearance. This leads the pair to return to Reed's Point, a location haunted by the legendary Jersey Devil, and something even worse than that, Joe Estevez. Reed's Point is a rather forgettable cryptid creature feature that gets points for using the seldom used Jersey Devil rather than Bigfoot. There have been films that feature Jersey Devils, such as The Barons, The Last Broadcast, and of course the Bad Ben series, but he is a monster that hasn't seen a lot of play in cinema. That said, Reed's Point's Jersey Devil looks more like a cross between a Bigfoot and a Wendigo rather than the more familiar horse-faced demon visage. I do like the way this Jersey Devil moves as it kind of tumbles towards its intended prey on all fours, which does end up to be quite disturbing. The articulated mask is also unique and creepy. That's pretty much the best I can do in terms of praise for Reed's Point, though. The film really is kind of a hodgepodge between a cryptid film and a generic Texas Chainsaw Killer family flick. I usually have a soft spot for killer family movies, as well as cryptid creature features, but there really isn't much creativity in making either distinct or unusual. The killers are rather dull and feel almost unmotivated at doing their jobs of simply being crazy. The role of the family and how it factors into some kind of feud with Sarah's family is equally vague and proves to be pointless to the overall plot. There are seeds of interesting ideas, it's just that the film really doesn't go for it in terms of giving this expansive cast anything interesting to do or personalities to do it with. By the time of the climax, the people are just running around and getting shot or eaten by the Jersey Devil, and each death occurs in an interchangeably uneventful manner. The acting isn't great either. The two leads, Sasha Ann and Evan Adams, are the best of the bunch, but working with the nonplussed cast doesn't do anything for their performances. Reed's Point gets points for telling a tale of a different cryptid, but the lack of enthusiasm permeates the cast of this by-the-numbers and easily forgettable film. Forgettable, that is, except for Joe Estevez, whose frantic role as a crazy Ralph type is so unbelievably bad it's utterly entertaining. Had Reed's Point leaned into the nuttiness of Estevez's line delivery, there might have been a train wreck-style charm to the film, but no dice. Room 203 is new in select theaters, on demand, and digital download from Vertical Entertainment. It's directed by Ben Jagger and written by Ben Jagger, John Poliquin, Nick Richey, from a novel by Nanami Kamon. Kim and Izzy, played by Francesca Zureb and Victoria Wynarska, respectively, are moving into a brand new apartment together. Kim is starting journalism school, while Izzy wants to celebrate and pursue an acting career. With two career paths as distinct as that, what could go wrong? A lot, actually. There actually is a lot of bad blood between these two, as Kim's parents aren't fond of Izzy and have basically disowned her, mainly because Izzy OD'd on pills after her mother died because Kim wasn't able to be with her in her time of need. So there's drama. It doesn't help that the two have moved into a haunted apartment together, which has a hole in the wall that can't be repaired, a creepy glass window depicting all sorts of death and destruction, and an even creepier landlord, played by Scott Gramillion. What are these two freewheeling gals in the city to do? Room 203 begins with promise. It basically tells the story we are about to see unfold with Kim and Izzy on fast forward, with a young couple making out in the apartment. They find a weird necklace in the hole in the wall. She puts it on and then immediately slits her throat with a broken bottle. This was a decent way to begin. It was visceral and dynamic, yet didn't really answer any questions other than something weird and supernatural is going on. If Room 203 had maintained that momentum for the rest of the film, I think they would have been onto something. Unfortunately, things slow down dramatically once Kim and Izzy move in. This is a film that really wants us to care about the characters, so a whole lot of time and energy are spent by the cast and filmmakers to flesh out who Kim and Izzy are. But this isn't a teen drama series where we follow the ups and downs of a friendship. It's a horror movie, and while the movie tries to trick you into the lulls of drama, it fails because everyone knows it's a horror movie they're watching. I get what they're going for. Lots of time is spent on developing the friendship of these two girls, but not a lot of it is interesting. Even the conflict between the girls could be fixed with one good sit down and chat, but instead everything is done to build this conflict up to something enormous. The ridiculousness of it all is highlighted later when, of course, the conflict does occur and the two air their petty grievances to one another through tears and by throwing things in highly soap operatic fashion. These actors are up to snuff, though. Both Zureb and Wynarska are talented actresses and able to convey lots and lots of drama. They are not your runway model types. They look like real people, which make them much more relatable than the stars of most horror movies of this kind. The rest of the cast are okay, but don't stand out. Eric Wiegand feels like he's batting way out of his league with Kim as he plays Ian, a fellow journalism student. The two just don't have chemistry, and ultimately he feels useless to the overall plot, other than to remind Kim that she's awesome and should use what she's gleaned from a week's worth of journalism to solve this mystery. Scott Gramillion plays the creepy landlord with all of the subtlety of a sledgehammer. He's comically overacting here, and while it would have been interesting if he were made to be a red herring, the writing isn't deep enough to deliver on that. There's a lot of potentially good moments in Room 203. There's a creepy atmosphere of the antiquated apartment, the ominous hole, the creepy glass window, but it feels as if the horror in this movie was stacked on top of each other as if one were ordering a sandwich at Subway rather than having horrors naturally grow and evolve from some kind of ominous source. There's some kind of tie-in with crows, an ancient demon, a sacrifice ritual, a killer necklace. It's just everything piled on top of each other like some towering Dagwood sandwich that ruins one's appetite rather than tantalizes the hunger if you look at it too closely. Room 203 is capably put together and well acted. Those are what it has going for it. But the scares turn out to be pretty generic, laughably so once it gets to the climax with a screaming madman brandishing a knife and about to perform a complex ritual. And this occurs in the basement, not the titular room itself. Early in the film, Izzy puts on the necklace from the opener, and you're just waiting for her to grab the nearest sharp object to perform a self-tracheotomy. But that never happens. It's missed cool opportunities, laughable developments, and downright cliched and remedial writing like that, with little depth, that ultimately makes Room 203 a destination worth avoiding. Finally, let's go classy with the Yellow Wallpaper. It's new on demand from Mutiny Pictures. It's directed by Kevin Pontuti and written by Alexandra Loreth and Kevin Pontuti. It's based on the short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. A young mother named Jane, played by Alexandra Loreth, retires in a country home for the summer with her domineering and absent husband, John, played by Joe Mullins, and finds herself falling into desperation, depression, and dementia while living in a room lined with yellow wallpaper. I've read and seen many adaptations of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's short descent into madness tale. I believe I first saw a short film on PBS as a kid, and it still haunts me to this day. It's a story that is as potent today as it is when it was written, mainly because mental illness is something often overlooked and shut away in even today's enlightened society. The Yellow Wallpaper continues to be a story of a woman silenced and a madness shut away. This version of The Yellow Wallpaper begins with a shock with Jane and her husband John riding in a carriage to their new home. When their baby begins crying, John asks Jane to take care of the child, to which Jane responds by throwing the baby out of the carriage window. As John rushes to stop the carriage and rescue the infant, it is immediately communicated that Jane is not a well person, and while John appears to have feelings for her, it's hard to argue against the extreme limitations he gives Jane. Jane is a jumble of emotions, confused, bound, and unclear as to what's happening around her. This lack of control is the central theme to The Yellow Wallpaper, and this opening, shocking scene tells the viewer that Jane is someone that requires much of the safekeeping she is enduring. It's hard to argue that Jane deserves otherwise. Sure, she's forbidden to write, which seems to be a form of release and creative outlet for her. It's debatable as to whether or not it would help if Jane were allowed to write out her fantasies freely rather than sneak the diary entries we hear in the narration. It's also debatable as to whether or not the tight leash her husband has put on her, forcing her to stay on the grounds and remain in her room when excited, is something necessary given the actions Jane does at the beginning. Jane is definitely not well and unsafe around her child. This scene where the child is tossed, opening the film the way it does, really takes a lot from Jane as a sympathetic character put upon by societal rules and views regarding women and insanity. It's because of this thematic muddiness that I felt the story of The Yellow Wallpaper to be somewhat unclear in its delivery. I always read the story as a statement about how a woman goes crazy because of the confinement she suffers at the hands of an overbearing and unsympathetic husband, and a society that is not ready for a woman's free will. But this opener makes it difficult to argue for Jane's freedom, and shows her in a light that depicts her as downright dangerous to herself and others. Alexandra Loreth seems to be an actress unafraid to portray Jane in a dark and sometimes ugly light. She's a wonderful actress and brings this complex character to life vividly as we follow her down this dark spiral. Loreth is able to carry the heavy burden of the film on her own with simply her stone-like expression and whispered narration. I do have to say, Loreth's vocal fry is something that is very distracting during these narrations. While it does communicate the character's depressed tone, I couldn't help but see Loreth holding a cigarette at a coffee shop doing these narrations, and it took me out of this period piece. Some end-of-sentence enunciations would have made some of the narration fit the era it was intended to depict. The Yellow Wallpaper needs an edit here and there. Coming in at an hour and 40 minutes, the film could have shaved off 25 or 30 of those minutes and been a much tighter tell. There are some fantastically paced nightmare sequences involving Jane's blur between reality and dream. There are also some great long sequences of Jane languishing in her room, attempting to find things to write upon, dreaming of conversing with made-up friends, and of course, tearing and picking at that yellow wallpaper. All of these scenes, including the powerful ending, which anyone who has read or seen this story won't ever forget, work marvelously in offering up both an enchanting and haunted image of a woman unfurling. While Kevin Pontuti's film may need a snip here and there in the editing room and makes things less black and white with the opener, The Yellow Wallpaper delivers in a harrowing dive into the abyss and an ending that gives the entire plunge a deep and resonant impact.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're